Welcome everyone to the post-screening Q&A with filmmakers from the In Her Shoes set. We are excited to offer opportunities for our global audience to hear more about and directly from our Viet Film Fest 2024 filmmakers through these panel conversations following the virtual film sets. In the In Her Shoes set, we step into the snapshot of 6 short films from across the globe, all of which showcase powerful glimpses into the multi-dimensional, multi-generational perspectives of the Vietnamese experience, but which also reflect the nuances in resilience, strength, suppression, and vulnerabilities of our strong female protagonists. Today, we are honored to welcome the artists behind the films to join me in conversation. I'd like to welcome Andy Bui, director and screenwriter of Hair Like Snow, Ji Tai, director, producer, and screenwriter, and Jan Lei, actress of Lullaby, Marian Hoang Ngọc Hill, director of Spring Will Come, and Carol Nguyen, director and screenwriter of Nanitic. All right, so let's get into it. So just to start us off, I'm going to ask our filmmakers, could you please introduce yourself and your film again and how you came into filmmaking and into this film specifically? So Andy, if you could please start us off.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I look a little crazy right now. It's been a crazy 48 hours. Coming to you guys from Seoul at the moment. I'm Andy Bui. I'm the writer-director of Hair Like Snow. And I kind of fell into filmmaking by accident, I would say. Kind of went to school, wanted to do graphic design because I'd done that through high school. And I come from a really small city. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And they kind of threw me into the digital media arts program, thinking that graphic design would fit somewhere in that category. And it turns out we don't have a program for that at all. And I ended up taking a bunch of film classes as prerequisites for some reason. And then from that point on, I just kept going on that film route and faking it till I make it. And then I found something that I enjoyed in that process. So.
And then what about into this film specifically?
Into this film specifically, I feel like this was a film I wanted to make for a while, but I didn't really understand what it was like having those differences between me and my mom, especially her being a lot older, coming from Vietnam, and me being born in America. I feel like there was always these big differences I never really understood. Even still, there are parts I'm still unraveling between me and my mom, but once I got to that point where I understand her a little bit more, I realized I was ready to make a film like this and explore the differences that me and my mom went through, trying to understand each other while she was trying to raise me in a completely different part of the world. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy. I'm going to pass it to you, G.
Hello, I'm Chi. I'm the writer, director, and producer of Lullaby. I came into filmmaking actually. I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker ever since I was kind of very young, probably 7 or 8 years old. I had a very distinct memory of watching a movie. It's really trite. It was a Steven Spielberg movie, and there was an interview with him, and I just felt like that was the coolest thing ever. And then as a teenager, my thing was really just like consuming films, constantly watching films, thinking about them. And then after I did my first degree, I went to kind of film school. So I kind of feel like it's been a very it's been a long ongoing kind of thread. I haven't really done anything else. I kind of love it and I hate it actually, because actually I kind of find in the UK being a filmmaker is really difficult. So I love it, but I also hate it because it's really hard. And I came into Lullaby because it's actually inspired by a true story. It's based on something that happened on my own refugee crossing, leaving Vietnam. And so it's a story that I've been kind of holding on to in many ways for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, G. We'd love it to invite you, Jan, to share a little bit about, how you came into the filmmaking world and into this role.
Hi everyone, my name is Jan Lei. I'm an actor and I've started acting when I was a teenager, mainly by going to drama classes to overcome my shyness problems, basically. And I kept on going till now, really. I've had other jobs, but this is the one that's stuck. With how I came into Lullaby is that I've worked with Chi before, and whenever Chi asks me to do something, I find it really hard to say no to her. But this story is really important to me. My parents were also boat people, It's a very heart-wrenching story, and at first I was a bit intimidated to take it on, but there's not actually that many Vietnamese actresses in London, and I thought, if not me, then who? And so that's how I came into that. Thank you.
I love that, Jan. That line, "If not me, then who?" I feel like that probably threads through a lot of our stories, right? Why we're all here. Would love to invite you, Marian, to respond.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. I was raised a musician first and foremost. I was playing piano since I was 4, so it was very just kind of, I didn't know it was creative at the time, but was pretty tapped in as a kid, and discovered film, I think, in high school, just watching films basically, and I became obsessed with film music and kind of pursued being a film composer in college, and then realized I actually wanted to write and direct films as well. And now 12 years later, I'm sort of finding my way back to music, which is an interesting circle of truth. This film is my first film in Vietnamese, shot in Saigon, and I think I made my first feature. I was just very determined to make a feature when I was young, and I made a feature. I shot it when I was like 25, 26. And after that, during COVID, realized I had a lot of personal growth to do, especially as far as Vietnamese identity was concerned. So I was lucky to be able to go and spend time in Vietnam and take Vietnamese class. And while I was in Saigon, I met Linh Dan Nguyen, who would become my very good friend and cinematographer on this project. And I ended up going back to Vietnam earlier this year, and she was like, let's shoot something. And that was pretty much it. And then I pulled the pieces together and we made a film. So yeah, really happy to be here and share it with everyone here. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Miriam. And that music angle, that's a part of a question I want to ask you later. So love that you shared that. And of course, last but certainly not least, Carol.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Carol, and my film is Nanitic. I came into filmmaking after taking a film class in high school. I was really lucky to be able to go to an arts high school where they offered a bunch of arts, and I dabbled in filmmaking and just, long story short, fell in love. And for this film in particular, it was born during the pandemic. After we went into lockdown, I went back home and lived with my parents. We lived in different cities, and that was the first time I lived with them for a very long time, since I had moved out when I was 18. And so a lot of reflection was done there, a lot of going back to my maternal extended family and kind of understanding how the dynamic has changed since certain people left the family, since certain people passed. And I wanted to encapsulate all those thoughts into one film, and that was how Nanitic was born.
It's a super powerful film. Thank you so much, Carol. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. I love the opening question because, I really feel like that's the beauty of these Q&As. It's the story behind the story, right? And so I think just being able to be informed by your own personal journeys helps the audience understand so much more of why you chose to tell the story that you did. So we're gonna sort of change gears a little bit, and I have a few questions for each individual filmmaker. So we're gonna go ahead and start with Andy. So Andy, as you shared in your opening question, this Hair Like Snow is definitely a reflection of your own lived experience. So that was really my question: is how much of the images and depictions of life in Hair Like Snow is a reflection of your own memory?
I would say a lot of the film is inspired by a lot of memories that I have. My mom worked at a nail salon on and off for a really long time, and that it became a big part of her character because she was just super hardworking, and that was a big influence to the character, but also influenced how much she had to sacrifice by working so much. I was basically raised by my older sister because my mom was working, my dad was working 2 to 3 jobs, and think there was a void that I created with my relationship with her. And when I was a kid, I didn't realize how much that affected me until I was older and the distance that had made between us. And then once she had retired, we had more time to spend together. I realized there was a very big misunderstanding both between me and her on who fundamentally we are as people because we grew up in such different places. So I drew a lot of inspiration from memories that whatever I have of her during my childhood influenced a lot of the film.
And so it's so interesting that last ending scene, and I don't know how much you want to speak to it, but I'm just curious, like what message did you hope to convey to the viewer in that ending scene? And really, what has been the response to your depiction of motherhood?
I think the ending is kind of up to interpretation, but I think the overall message is realizing the greatest gift we can give one another is just being there for one another, especially as I touched upon. Asian parents in general are very notorious for overworking themselves, and we are taught to do the same, as success is kind of equivalent to how much you work or how much work you can put out. And in that story and in that progress of trying to find the perfect gift or birthday gift, she kind of realizes the best, perfect, or only gift that she could possibly give is time. And that's something that he'll come to understand later once he becomes older, like I did for myself. So I'm hoping everyone kind of pulls from their own experiences when watching the ending and kind of relating it back to their experience.
And then in terms of the response, I'm so curious, what was your mom's response when she did get a chance to see it, or has she?
I feel like my mom still doesn't really understand what I do. Like she kind of knows, but then also doesn't. This is the first one I got to work on a short film with her, which was really special to me. For a while when I was working in the industry, she had no idea what I did, and it was very hard to explain to her. But when she was on set and she was having fun, and she took lines, some of the lines was totally improv by her, which I totally did not expect from her. But she had fun, and that was the most I could ask for it. And I think we bonded over this and how I saw our relationship as a kid. I think that healed a lot for the two of us.
That's wonderful. And how cool to be able to bring your mom into your space and have her be a part of telling this like your own story, right? That's super
Yeah, she always
powerful.
said it jokingly how she wanted to be an actress, but she knew that it wasn't for her. But now that she has more time, she actually really enjoyed it. She's like, well, if you ever need an actress, like, let me know.
I feel like all Vietnamese people aspire to be actors, low key.
Yeah, for sure.
Like all of our elders. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Andy. So we're just gonna switch gears a little bit. And so I have a few questions for Ji and Jan for the film Lullaby. So Ji, really the backdrop of your film is this horrible experience has led to a haunting in which the audience really sits within and leaves holding in this powerful film. So what really drew you to the core message of your film, and how has it impacted you personally?
Oh, I'm going to get to that, but I just have to say, I was laughing so much and smiling so much during Andy's answer because Jan's mum actually plays her mum in our film. So I kind of love like all these little like kind of maternal kind of connections. I'm sure Jan will talk about that in a bit, but I just wanted to explain that. I thought it was really lovely to kind of listen to you. I think we probably have a kind of common experience there with mums, which maybe we can talk about. Okay, so what drew me to the core message of the film? So I actually wrote Lullaby pre-pandemic, and during the pandemic, I made a different film. I made a film called Raging Grace, which is the first British Filipino kind of film that has ever been made. And it was a kind of a miracle, that it could be made. But the fact that it gave me the confidence. And so after, I remember like during the filming of Raging Grace, which is a feature film, I was thinking, you know what, if there's a place in the world for a British Filipino film, I think there could be a place in the world kind of for Lullaby. And it really inspired me. So even though I was working as a producer on this other film, it made me go, if I can do this on Raging Grace, I can do Lullaby. And I wrote it because it was this true story. And it was a story that ever since I've known it, I haven't been able to forget it. But it's like one of the many stories that comes, I think, from very, for me, very specifically, like the Vietnamese diaspora, especially if you are a boat refugee, it's like so many of our stories were kind of lost to the sea, where we made those kind of crossings. And I kind of felt nobody will know the heartache of this woman or what she went through. And I kind of felt like, not that I was approaching this as a documentary, because it's actually highly fictionalized piece, highly dramatized, but I felt like this is how I feel I can make some kind of historical record of the things that we went through. And that really, for me, was the core message of like, I'm going to put this down. I'm going to make this thing real. It shouldn't just be part of a verbal tradition that goes away. When I pass on, my mum passed on, we forget these stories and we forget these horrors that were done to us. So that was my thing. And although it's a really, Jan described it as a heart-wrenching kind of tale, I actually found it very cathartic to be able to kind of commit that story to some kind of record. So although it was very sad and, it's a very bleak story, I felt actually that the act of, executing it became actually a very positive thing, because I was able to make something that was invisible or unseen or unheard, then visible or heard, and, and kind of recorded. So, for me, it was it felt like a positive thing I was doing despite the subject.
I love that. Thank you so much, G. And also, I think, sort of the somatic feeling that the images that your film sort of like surfaces for folks. I think that's something that sometimes just reading something on paper, doesn't exactly capture. So I appreciate that. And a question for Jan. So Jan, I know you mentioned that this isn't your first film working with G, but what was the process of working with her and the team to prepare for your role? And so much of your scenes were actually in water, right? And so I'm just very curious as to what that experience was like for you.
Okay, I'll start with the process with working with Chi. Working with Chi is very collaborative. So at first, I think she asked me at the beginning of February, and then we shot it by April, May, right? She's nodding. So it was all very, very fast. First, it was going through the script. She wanted me to make sure that I was comfortable with everything she'd written, and then we started working on the actual lullaby. In the film, there is a lullaby that I sing that we had to write ourselves. So we started with a poem that she had written that I tried to translate, and then we worked with another musician to try and work out how to write that lullaby. Turns out writing music with Vietnamese lyrics is really, really tough. So that was the beginning of that. In terms of like preparing emotionally for the film, I honestly didn't want to think about it too much on the way to actually filming it, because I didn't want to complicate it for myself or make it tough. I sort of just let the feelings come towards me on the day, because in the film I don't say much. There's barely any lines. It's all things sort of happening to me and around me. In terms of the scenes in the water, I didn't want to think about that too much either. At the beginning, she mentioned that at first, I think the way we were going to do it was that we were going to sink an entire set and that I'd be underwater. And that did scare me a bit because I'm not a strong swimmer. But then the more I thought about it, the more I just thought, there's going to be safeguarding in place. And even if I was uncomfortable, it'd probably look good on camera. But for the water scenes, it was really fun, actually. I was put in a dry suit and then clothes on top, and I was wearing lots of padding for all the stunt scenes. So really, I felt like even though I was acting it, I didn't have the toughest job. I feel like everyone around me had the tough job. Like the DOP had to make sure that we weren't going to wreck the camera. There were stunt guys in place. We had a real child with us who played my child in the water. So there was a lot of things to think about. So I feel like I kind of had it easy. I just had to get the emotions out. That was a bit of a ramble, sorry.
No, that was great. Yeah. Thank you, Jan. And I'm sure G just coordinating all of that, everything that Jan is speaking to, right?
Oh, totally. Well, the first thing I want to say is that Jan totally does herself a disservice sometimes when she talks about these things. So, firstly, I wrote the script with her in mind. Like, there was no one else that was ever going to play, that character. And she was who I was thinking about as I was writing it. So, really, I was approaching her saying, will you do this for me? And I'm so glad that she said yes. I didn't know that she was like a little bit nervous about it. I was just like, she needs to, I kind of really felt she needed to do this. And like because of the sets and everything, I didn't have the normal amount of access to an actor because we could only have so many people in the tank. So I had to do all my prep with Jan front up. But what I can say is because I've worked with Jan so much and we have a really kind of strong relationship, it was a real benefit to the film because I didn't have to labor any details. We literally did a scene by scene. And then when, in preparation, and then when we came to the shoot days, I would just kind of jog her like, this is where we are at the moment. And she would kind of emotionally kind of go there. But she was she was just containing it all and then controlling when it kind of came out. She made it very easy for me, can I just say? Like, she made it super easy kind of for me. So I thought she was incredible in this. Thank you.
Thank you. You were incredible. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to switch gears to Marion's film, Spring Will Come. So Marion, you spoke about, the heart of music. And so I think that was so prominent for me when I saw the film. And, the soundtrack and music is so prominent. It plays over vivid scenes while also capturing a certain energy and pulse of life in Saigon. So tell us a little bit about the music selection and how you chose to weave it into your storyline. What character does the music composition play for you?
Yeah, thank you. So I've had this very subconscious relationship to jazz my whole life, which was kind of inexplicable until I think I realized how prominent jazz was in Saigon during this period, like all the way up until 65, 75. I'd say I'm pretty early on in my journey of discovering and learning about this music. It's something that I really plan to do. I started listening to, jazzy Vietnamese music from this period a couple of years ago. And for this film in particular, these were just songs I was drawn to the feel and the mood of, because for me, filmmaking is really about capturing a feeling, and music is such a big part of that. And then I noticed that all of these songs that I was drawn to were about spring, which I still am not sure why so many songs from this period are about spring. I'm not sure if it signifies kind of like the other side of darkness, or like when all this is over, it'll be spring. But a lot of heart-throbbing kind of nostalgic songs are referring to spring, to Sun. And hence that was kind of what inspired the title ultimately as well of the piece. I live in New Orleans because I love jazz so much, and I've been in the jazz world here for a long time. And when I heard the first piece, which I use in the film, which is Don Sun by Carol Kim. Well, Carol Kim sings. I was really struck by the sounds of literal New Orleans traditional jazz. The way the musicians are playing sounds like the way they play down the street from my house. And that connection coming to me musically and not really knowing, okay, who's playing on this recording? How did this influence get to Saigon? And, who is shepherding it? It led me down this, long, passionate rabbit hole, and I'm still at the beginning of it, but it felt really special to be able to incorporate some of these tracks into the film.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Marion. And I remember as soon as I heard like Carol Kim's voice, like so much of my memory of her music is like from growing up, like in the diasporic community. So it was so beautiful to be able to hear that sound kind of juxtapositioned with like life in Saigon, right? Like street scenes and all that. So on that note, we think about the through line of our set, In Her Shoes, is a really reflection of the relationship between the protagonist and her environment. So in your film, the lifeblood and energy of Vietnam is the setting. So can you describe what the experience was shooting in the city, and really your choice to capture specific shots in the film? Like when I think about like the shot of like the living area, like the apartment buildings, they reside in, just really powerful shots.
Yeah. So one thing about this film is we had no script. And I was very committed to letting the elements of the film kind of reveal themselves to me while I only really had less than a week for pre-production, and I just was kind of following signs of what this film should be and where, and so this neighborhood at the tip of District 3, close to Cao Tang, is where my mom grew up. And I was just kind of walking around with my cousin and stumbled into this very, very special neighborhood called Nguyen Tin Thuot. And I actually proceeded to learn that a lot of locals have shot there because it's a very vibrant, visually interesting neighborhood that actually, like, the housing was once housing for American soldiers back in the day. So I thought, okay, well, here are some really interesting connections in this neighborhood. And also it's just a very pedestrian, it's like this little area of Saigon where it's very pedestrian, everybody knows each other. It just has this feel that I knew I wanted to capture. I was like, this is what I want, the world to feel like. And so me and Lindan, the cinematographer, just kind of spent time walking around, talking to people who lived there, looking inside their apartments, and every apartment has its own wild story. And then we ended up being lucky enough to stumble upon an empty apartment in that complex, which was about to be sold to someone the next day, but they let us film in there. So then I had a team, a young, incredible team led by Tu Tam, my production designer, and they filled the whole place with pretty much her own stuff, I think. And she really leaned into this vibe that, the two girlfriends, one of them is a DJ, and they have the two of them have this wonderful energy, and she really just kind of put that energy into the apartment. And we were so lucky. Everything just kind of worked out, and people were very welcoming and not fazed by a film crew there, because it's such a place where people film a lot. So we had a really nice, easy time filming there.
That's so great to hear. And again, the story behind the story, right? Who would have known that all of this kind of happened in the matter of, I'm sure, hours, right? Just trying to get everything together. Thank you so much, Marian. All right, Carol. So your film, Nanitic. Wow, Carol, your film is such a beautiful and powerful depiction of just like the cadence and normalcy of life when a family has to care for the sick and the dying. I think, as I was watching the film, there's just like shadows and lights, and I think just like the themes of care and attention, like the images of like the dinner table and caretaking, the labor of women. And in particular, I love the relationship that you portray between the two cousins, the two young girls who spend days with their youngest aunt and grandma. It's really a powerful parallel of their energy, their imagination, their play within the same household, as like a slow, quiet, and somber care of a dying elder. So tell us a little bit about this portrayal and how you formulated the characters in your film, kind of revolving around, the setting.
Yeah, I think a lot of the story is tiny nostalgic moments that I had as a kid. And the characters were about the same, inspired by certain people in my life that that kind of portrayed the theme and the topics that I wanted to discuss. And so kind of condensing all those memories and those inspirations into one character, one story, one household. And I think what I really found interesting during the time of that exploration is how 3 generational immigrant families, how every person in the family finds their place and finds their job, and how that they coexist together, even though that might not mean that individuals get to explore in their own means their personal desires, but how that need and that want to push the family forward is also so ingrained in us. So that was it.
Thank you so much, Carol. And so, like, I'm curious, what has been, like you mentioned, each of these characters sort of portray a different relationship to, the elder grandma and the ways in which responsibility sort of falls. So what has been sort of the response to your depiction of caretaking, girlhood, the responsibility of women's labor from the audience who have seen your film?
What has been, you mean the depiction in my film?
Mm-hmm. What has been the audience response?
I think a lot of people who have had grandmas or elders in 3 generational households who have had memories of caring for their own family members were touched and could relate somehow. I think in the Vietnamese culture, especially in the older generations, there's a more traditional sense of a woman's role in the family, which is often caretaking, which is often kind of, I think my mom calls it like the hamburger generation, where you're forced to take care of the children and the elders. So the pressure between that as well. I wanted to put that feeling and that unsaid force in the film, so I hope it came through.
Thank you. And I'm curious, I just wanted to sort of expand this question to everyone. Just, when I think about the depictions for each of your films of, the protagonists, some realm of their identity, right? Either as a caretaker, as a mother, holding grief, all of those pieces. But oftentimes it feels like the through line or the common theme is there's a lot of like silence, right? In terms of like holding it, maybe not having a lot of like avenues to be able to like get support or like to be able to engage. So I'm curious as to as different audiences have seen your films, like what has been their general response to the way in which you're portraying your protagonists, their experience. This question is a little bit different. I was just sort of adding on to the question that I asked for Carol. Is just what has been like the general response to the way in which you've depicted your lead characters.
Who do you want to answer it first?
Anyone can dive in. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. What has been the response? So far we've only shown the film at what I call at festivals, so festival audiences, and I suppose one of the things I'm really excited about by coming to the Viet Film Festival is showing it to a very culturally specific audience. I had a really similar experience, I think possibly to Andy. When I finished the film, I showed it to my mum, and she had no words for it. To be honest, I don't know if she understood, and I don't know how it made her feel. Like she was, I was I still don't know to this day how she kind of feels about the film, and I've rationalized it to myself because, as a first generation refugee, who fled her birth country, who came and was dropped into a post-industrial kind of town and then just had to kind of get on with it. she hasn't had the luxury of, having a life where she's been immersed in art and culture. She worked every day, she just works really hard, 16-hour days. And so I don't know if she can receive a film like Lullaby, even though, on some level she understands where it comes from. Like, I don't know, like, it's possible she doesn't have the words for it. I don't know. So what I know from showing it to festivals, is audiences are kind of very kind of moved by it. They understand it from a very universal point of grief, that when something like that happens to you, nothing will ever be, the same. But I'm really interested to hear, like, from audiences from this festival, because there will be a bit more cultural specificity, like how it, also how it makes them feel. So for me, it's like, I've yet to kind of, I'm really interested in this kind of part of seeing how people respond to it.
Yeah, most definitely. Thank you, G. Others?
I guess I can answer that. Great points. I think we can relate a lot about working with moms. I feel like we should talk about that more sometime. But I made this film for the Albuquerque Asian Film Festival. It was like second year running. There's a really small Asian population in New Mexico. We're kind of in the desert, washed up between Texas, Colorado, and California. So there's not a lot of us out here. I'm a cinematographer by heart or by nature, but they asked me to make something because there's not that many representation for directors specifically in New Mexico. And I've always wanted to make films. I love to write, but naturally I just like to frame compositions. So it was really weird for me to get into like a director's chair, tell my mom how to act and how to do certain things. But I think it was just a reason to bring the community together, which is a lot of the things I like to do, is to bring the community, what little community we have, together. And even though I agree, my mom, I don't think she really understands what my film is really about. I don't know if it's the attention span or if she just hasn't had access to movies like that, because she loves Despicable Me, but when I put on a movie that I made, she's like, yeah, that was cool. But at the end of the day, bringing people together is what it was about for me. And this is my first year at Viet Film Fest, hopefully many more. And I'm really excited to see how the film resonates with other people.
Thanks so much, Andy. Anyone else like to share?
Hey, I'm too scared to make my mom movie, but I will. I will one day. I actually, not a lot of people have seen the film yet, so I'm pretty excited and nervous to see, especially what the Viet Film Fest audience has to say. But from my friends, especially, obviously, I mean, this film is really for Viet Kieu, who, there's two angles of the film, right? There's sort of two protagonists. There's the queer Saigonese Gen Z characters who are just going through their relationship problems, which we can all relate to. And then there's the more specifically Viet Kieu experience of an American Viet Kieu back in Vietnam, kind of like looking for something. And I think that's something that's very relatable. And what I think is interesting for folks is being able to relate to both of those points of view. And, the characters even talk about, whether you're a Vietnamese person in Vietnam, a young Vietnamese person in Vietnam, or a Viet Kieu going back to Vietnam for the first time, we're all kind of, having identity crises, and that it's okay to be there. And these characters kind of hold each other in that complexity when they meet. And I think I'm really looking forward to hearing what resonates for different Viet Kieu, but I've had positive feedback so far.
Thanks, Marian. And I particularly love that line because I think, myself being one of those Viet Kieu who did go back and living there for a short period of time, there's always that like the narrative, like the Viet Kieu going back to like find their roots, find themselves, and I really love that, in that scene, that the response from the local Saigonese is like, hey, we're all looking for ourselves too. Like, we don't really know ourselves either, you know? So that was a really powerful line. Carol, do you want to respond? Like
Sure, I'll respond quickly. We're lucky that we already had a full festival run, and we released our film online earlier this summer. So it was a very positive experience. I think I was very surprised to see non-Viet diaspora people be touched by the film and relate to. And in Montreal, where I currently live, we don't have the luxury of having a huge Vietnamese community of like in California when it comes to casting. So just getting the film together and casting it was a huge process of doing wild casting, doing Canada-wide casting, trying to get the family accents and dialects on screen together. So I think that was also something that was a very proud moment for a lot of Vietnamese filmmakers from where I'm from, to just see that happen. So yeah, super, super grateful for the reception so far.
Thank you everyone for responding. Yeah, and I think, you know, for those of us who live here in Orange County, where we're so close to this like base, right? Like we call it almost like Little Saigon, USA, like in the diaspora, you know, I'm always so curious about, you know, what holds our Viet identified filmmakers who are not part of like the hub, right, of Orange County, of Southern California. So I appreciate you all kind of speaking to, you know, the ways in which, and thank God for virtual space, right, and the online communities. But I know that y'all, your journey and your struggle to like manifest your craft is like 10 times more than, you know, folks who are here and have access to a lot of networks. So I really appreciate your labor. So as we kind of move towards sort of the end of our conversation, I wanted to leave some time for folks just to be able to share about what you're currently working on. So what are future projects and opportunities for us to continue supporting you outside of watching your films at Viet Film Fest? Anyone who would like to go first, please feel free to chime in.
Oh, go ahead.
So what have I just finished working on? So I just finished working on a TV show called 9 Bodies in the Mexican Morgue, which comes out, I think, next spring on MGM Plus. So that's my next thing. Apart from that, I think me and Chi will definitely be working together again soon, hopefully on a feature, which is a bit like a spiritual sequel to this. Would you say, Chi?
Yeah, totally. So I've been writing for Jen again to kind of make a feature film, which for me is like charts all the kind of things that happened during the war, after the war specifically, but not encumbered by kind of history. So it's entirely fictionalized, set in the future, and it's about a mother and a daughter who are on the run. And it's again inspired by something very true. When my mum was pregnant with my older sister, we found out that the powers that be were sterilizing Southern Vietnamese women in the hospitals when they were giving birth. There's nothing documented about this. And so my grandma basically was like, you're not going into a hospital. We have to find a way for you to deliver this baby safely. You know, they're not going to take away your kind of organs. And I kind of built a whole kind of story based on 2 people on the run for that. And Jen is going to be one of the mamas on the run. So yeah, I can't wait to do it. I've been writing it all year and hopefully be making it, you know, soon. You know, the gods of money hopefully will shine upon us, and we'll be back at the Viet Film Festival in a couple of years to share it with you.
Thank you, G. Man, resourcing your film, that's a whole nother conversation, right? But thank you so much, G and Jan. Others? How else can we support you?
I can go. I'm currently writing a feature fiction script, and hopefully by next year we'll have the finished final draft. I'm currently on draft 3 or 4. I don't even know. It's 4 point whatever versions. And that one is about three characters whose plot kind of intertwine, and it kind of shows the interconnectedness of these characters within a three-generational family, three women and a girl, well, two women and a girl, after the matriarch of the family dies. And right now in post-production, I have a feature documentary that will be finished next year. We were supposed to be in Vietnam right now shooting, actually, but because of the weather, we couldn't go, and we pushed that till January. But that's a personal film. It actually plays off of one of the storylines, the stories that my dad talks about in my previous short film. So it's a family piece, but also it's a hybrid documentary that explores Vietnamese rituals and spirituality as well. We've already filmed, I would say, 3/4 of the film. And it was such an interesting ride to film in Vietnam and to have very odd filming hours and film in cemeteries and funerals and work with animals and locals. And yeah, so I'm in the midst of that right now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carol. Andy?
What I've been working on. It's been a wild ride. To be completely honest, I think I stepped away from the industry for a bit. I was working in camera crews for a while, and I realized that wasn't a way for me to make the films I wanted to make. Climbing that ladder that everyone, if you can do it, props to you. I personally just can't. I don't think the industries, I have gripes. I have a love-hate relationship with the industry, especially in the US anyway. I don't think it's really built for us, especially as Vietnamese filmmakers, to succeed. So I had a quarter-life crisis of, if I'm not going to make movies, what I'm going to do. So I didn't know what to do for a while. I stopped being an assistant camera. I went back to serving, which is what I was doing before. Because my parents owned a Vietnamese restaurant. I worked there for God knows how long. I chased my dreams, made films, and then went back to serving. So it kind of felt like 4 steps back. And I was just trying to figure out what to do at that point. But I'm a video producer director at the National Laboratories in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So that's been keeping me busy, but I'm still writing on the side. And I'm still the cinematographer for my writing partner, who's currently based in LA. And we're currently producing or pre-producing our feature-length film, our first feature, which is kind of scary. That's been in the process for a couple of years, but I'm hoping to get back out there and shoot something more creative for sure.
Keep at it, Andy. Hold on to the hope. And Marian.
Yeah, Andy can definitely relate to the crisis of industry. I think I've found clarity in this, realizing this work, or remembering that this work doesn't have to exist within an industry. It just, you can't live on it. So in that vein, I was really lucky to be in a collaboration that I just wrapped on with 2 incredible Vietnamese artists, one Andrew Nguyen and singer-songwriter Thao Nguyen, formerly known as Thao and the Get Down, Stay Down. And they both came to New Orleans, and we shot this music art film, amorphous project that was so invigorating and involves a lot of music, Vietnamese music, and that's going to be premiering in New Orleans on November 2nd at Prospect Art Opening, and then we'll be playing in museums after that, so not a theatrical film. And I am also working on a music project called Saigon Jazz Revival, which is precisely devoting space and recreation to music that existed in Vietnam that's jazz influenced between 55 and 65. And so we'll be rearranging old tunes, writing new tunes, and performing them here next year.
Amazing. I love sort of the the multitude of different storylines and projects that are coming out of this group of talented filmmakers. So we're so excited to see everyone's upcoming projects and stories, and we'll definitely stay connected so we can continue to support you. All right, y'all. So we have reached the end of our time together for our post-screening Q&A of the In Her Shoes set at Viet Film Fest 2024. A very special thank you to all of our filmmakers and cast members who joined us today and for sharing your stories and journeys with us. Also, a special thank you to our audience and viewers for joining us as well and for supporting Viet Film Fest. We encourage you to continue watching the films through our platform accessible at vietfilmfest.com. All right, so we hope to see everyone at the theaters or online at this year's Viet Film Fest. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.